I'm going to review some of the machine learning capabilities in the Oracle Analytics Cloud. Note that the financial analytics, the HCM analytics, soon the SCM analytics and procurement analytics are all built on Oracle Analytics Cloud. They're actually built on Oracle Analytics Cloud in the autonomous data warehouse. So essentially, when you think about it, it's really analogous to what we had on-prem. OBIEE and then the BI apps, right? Essentially the BI apps were content loaded into OBIEE. And a lot of that same messaging and that same approach has been taken with the analytics products. It's such that you've got Oracle Analytics Cloud and you have pre-built metadata, pre-built connections to our SaaS applications, data is loaded. We've got some pre-built dashboards, some analytics that are included, some components called decks that are really kind of analogous to what we have in Infolet's, a little more powerful in Oracle Analytics Cloud. This version is 6 that I'm looking at. This is the first Redwood version. Everything's done in Redwood. So what I'm going to do is, it's interesting, machine learning is kind of built throughout this tool. So when you think about this tool, the ability to be able to do data preparation, right? To be able to connect to my data. And then once I've made that connection, to be able to enrich that data, to be able to make connections within the data itself, and then have recommendations and have that process to be able to get my data ready for use. And then second, visualizations. And what machine learning does really well is being able to identify relationships in your data maybe that you haven't recognized, right? So we've got that ability to do that. And then, of course, what we'll do is also we'll build a machine model, right? We'll do a machine learning model inside this tool. We'll train it against test data and then deploy it against some production data. So the first thing we'll do is we'll load our training data up. We'll go through that process of profiling and visualization and using machine learning there. So the first thing we'll do, and I've got a couple files on my desktop here. I've got one as training and one as production. So let's hit the data set first. And again, these are where you do all your connections, right? All your connections to your different areas. Again, creating connections is very easy. Note when you do your connection through your Oracle applications, you're going down to the subject areas within OBIEE. That's what you're making your connection. You're pulling that data, making that connection. You'll see all your data in a subject area, and then you'll have the ability to do data preparation against that. Choose what fields, do concatenation, all that kind of stuff. But you can see, again, pretty big list of, right out of the box we can connect to. So let's go back actually here, because we're just going to do a spreadsheet. And I've got my training data. And this will load that training data up, right? I can descriptions, that kind of thing. I can look at the data that's been loaded, and I'm just going to go into add this. And we saved it. So what it's going to do is it's going to analyze my data, right? It's going to give me some things like what states are involved, distribution. It's interesting to give you a little more background on what I'm doing here. I've got a customer file. Customer file I'm using as training. It's got the lifetime value of a customer. And then along with that, it's got components, right? What's the customer's education, what kind of car did they buy, what kind of state, I think this is all automotive data. What kind of coverage do they get, essentially it's kind of going through marital status, and it's going to take those elements and then make predictions over some new customers and what they may have, in terms of lifetime value. So again, and it's also going to do recommendations. You can see down the slide here in terms of it's made 20 recommendations for my state data. And it might be longitude, latitude. What it's saying is these are other things that you may want to consider with this data, right? Do you want state population? There's county, all this kind of stuff, right? Time zone, all this data that you may need and want to do. You can also within here, when you think about this, the ability to do things like improve the data from a standpoint of doing formulas or creating new fields or hiding data, splitting fields, concatenation. There's a lot of capabilities there. So let's just go in. Note I'm going to create this project. In a project, really within Analytics Cloud is kind of the overall container. I got a project. That project contains data. Those data contain same terminology we used before, subject areas, and then I can create narrations off that, right? So here's my data. And what I'm going to do now is I want to figure out what some of the relationships are in my data, right? What type of relationships there are around lifetime value. So it's going to go out. It'll give me some data here about the lifetime value. And again, it's using machine learning here to analyze it. Then it starts looking through my data and trying to figure out making recommendations on some charts, right? Here's some things I've found in terms of relationships that you may want to consider as graphs or starting points or relationships. It'll also do anomalies. So it'll go out and look for anomalies in my data. So let me just pick these three. Nice, right? It's just a good starting point for your data, right? Just a nice place to be able, and then be able to start, adding new data. Of course, just an FYI, you've got all of these graphs, visualizations you can use. You can load new visualizations. Note that, right? You can go out and define your own, again, using R or Python, and be able to create those and then upload those in. And again, right out of the box here, I can do stuff like do analytics, right? So I can add my statistics, clusters, reference lines, and then be able to do things like when I do that, to be able to control, what's the algorithm I use and such, right? So let's save this. So what we've done is just got an understanding of our data. We've loaded our data up, and let's save this. And we're going to call this customer LOV. I'll call this E. And I'm going to save this. So what I've done is I've got essentially a project, and I've got my data. So now let's go in and do our machine model learning. So what we'll do is we'll go here, and we want to go to data, and we're going to go. You can see, we can see our data right in here. Should be able to see it. Check this goes in alphabetical. I bet I can sort it that way. Bingo. And there's our data, right? We got that laid in here. This is the actual one we did. The customer 1LOV PME was the file that we did from training data. So what we'll do now is you do data flows. So data flows essentially are ways, and I'll probably show you the easiest way to explain it, is are things that you create to be able to prepare your data, right? So take a data source, have steps maybe that do things like improve the data, and then ultimately create a data file as an output, right? So we're going to go into here. First thing you need is data, right? And this was our training data. So we'll go ahead and add that. So you can see our data in here. Again, you can do things within here. And one thing I want to do is I want to get rid of some of this data, right? Because I'm analyzing data, I don't necessarily, I'm looking at LOV, I'm looking at relationships among that data. I don't necessarily need things like customer, right? Or effective date. Those really don't help in my prediction. Because I'm looking at things like policy, sales channel, where does this customer come from? What did they buy? You know what I mean? All those type of things. From that, I want to add my machine learning model. Interesting thing here, a couple things to note. One is you can see down here, we've got time series forecast, we've got cumulative value, we've got statistical capabilities to do data science that are exposed through OAC from the Autonomous Data Warehouse. And that's important because previously you would have to go down to your Autonomous Data Warehouse, execute your statistical models, right? But now you can do them right through here, and again, you'll be prompted for all the variables and the parameters, which I think is really cool. The other thing too is you can see create S-base cube. I've got to check on this because I thought S-base had been removed. I'm not sure if you need a separate license, if you need to license S-base to be able to use this capability, but right out of the box, again, being able to prepare your data, analyze your data, well, check on licensing, but you create an S-base cube. That's nice, right? And down here are all your models in terms of being able to train, right? So your machine learning models. So again, you can apply an existing model, upload a model, train clustering, binary, multi-classifier. Those are really you're not really predicting a value in those. You want to be able to train the numeric value. And these are I can go over these later in more detail, but these are essentially the types of models that you can use right out of the box, right? So I've got my train. And most of these, again, I go over these later, these tend to be, in terms of building and how the model executes, how many records the model will execute against, and being able to run its training sequences. So again, all you need to really do here is let's save this. And we're going to call our model something. We'll call it PM and today's date. I know, so I can find it easy. 06. All right, go ahead. Oh, and actually what I didn't do, and I need to do here, good lesson, select a column, right? What's the available data? And we're predicting target LOV, right? So now I go ahead and save it, right? So to go out, it's going to come up target and then go through. And I'll save that. And I'm going to run this. So it's going to go through. And what it's interesting, this will take a second. I only have like 1,800 records in here. Interesting is that it'll run it, and then I can go in and I can see, it'll give me mathematical expressions of exactly how this model was trained in terms of what's the quality of the model. So let's go down to our data. Actually, we'll go down to machine learning. Right. Oh, and I actually didn't give that a name. Should probably do that. So let's go ahead and inspect this. And here's the quality. And again, we can go over these more later, but the things like the absolute error rate want to be less than 1, right? And this is, and that's actually a good model. That's a good score. So we'll close this. Interesting, I actually got this data from a site that has test data and production type data that you can use for data models, which is nice to be able to run that. It's interesting. This is really why why data is so valuable now, right? Because people want good data, diverse data to be able to train these models. Better the data, the better the model is going to perform, right? So we've got our model here, nicely named Untitled. So now we'll go in and we want to be able to use our prediction, apply our model, and see what happens. So I'm going to go back now to my data, and we're going to create a new data flow, and this time we're going to use our production data. Actually, you know what we have to do before that? We have to upload our production data. So let me grab my production data. We'll drop that in. And here's my production data. Customer LOV. I'll write that down because there are a lot of files in here. PME prod. Right. Again, it's going to make all those predictions or those recommendations. We'll just go into visualization again here. Note what I don't have in here. Right? I don't have LOV because these are new customers. I've got no lifetime value, right? That's what they're going to, this is what the model is going to predict for me. So I'm going to call it LOV eProd. We'll save that. So now let's go back and we're going to do our data flow. We'll create a new data flow. Okay. And we need to find our production data set. We found it. So what we'll do here is we got our data flow. Again, something else with this data flow. You can add data from different sources into it, so it can have different files. You can filter it, split columns, you know what I mean, all that data preparation stuff. Note the other way, you don't necessarily have to run your machine model from here. When you're in visualizations, you can grab your machine model and run it as a scenario. Very cool. I'm going to apply a model now, right? Because I've got one out there. Got my old untitled. So I've got that. What it's going to do is create this field predictive value. What I also do is I have to save this data. Okay. And we'll call this All right. I need to save this. So the data flow is saved. I've got my data. Let's run it. Interesting, this training data is so valuable. This is why you see people like Marriott getting hacked, right? Yeah, they often think, hey, they want to get their passwords and all that. That's probably part of it, but a lot of it, they want Marriott's data, right? They want thousands upon thousands or millions upon millions of records that they can now run through and train their machine models with. Potential people who sell this kind of stuff. So now let's go back and we're going to go home. We want to be able to look at our data. So we're going to create a project. And what it's done is it's actually gone through and created for us a file. We'll just find that file. So there's the file that was created. And see what it did is it took my file, created a whole new subject area, but now it went down and it added, you can see, predicted value. So now I can just, heck of it here, start to do my visualizations. And predicted value, actually I'm going to do this, do predicted value and then come down to customer. It's easier just to drag it like this and do rows. And there it is. So I've got my customer, and again, I've got my predictive value. And in this case, you know, again, you can do things like more visualizations, do your analytics. Again, now I can start to do statistical analysis against these customers. Of course, other capabilities within this are the ability to create your own model, maybe in another tool, your own machine learning model, and then be able to upload that. You can also do Python programming directly in OAC. So again, you could use Python itself to be able to create your model. That's it. Thanks.